Chapter 1831. Qi Xianxian held Aba's arm and walked out of the cabin. Suddenly, she felt the ground shake slightly. The two of them swayed at the same time and almost bumped into Mrs. Qi, who was running towards them in a panic. "There are waves on the sea. I heard that there will be a storm tonight." Mrs. Qi hugged her daughter, Huan Huan, and said to the two of them in a panic, "Ah! What's going on?" Mrs. Qi said in a panic, "I heard it from someone else. We can only find out the exact situation from the captain." "I'll go and see what's going on," Aba said and left quickly. When she found the captain, who was sweating profusely at the back of the ship, he hurriedly explained to her that no one predicted a storm when they left the ship. Aba hurriedly gathered the mentors and friends and glanced at Qi Xianxian. Xianxian hurriedly said to everyone with a serious expression, "Looking at the sky, it does look like it's going to change soon. Everyone, be careful. Prepare your things as soon as possible and dress up neatly. This ship can't withstand too many waves, and it might capsize at any moment." Aba nodded and added a few more words before asking them to go back to their rooms to replenish their energy. In the evening, the waves on the sea grew bigger. Everyone felt their hearts beating wildly as they sat on the ship. A few of them even vomited. The sound of the waves crashing against the ship could be heard. Everyone in the cabin was tense. As for Qi Xianxian and the rest, they were all worried sick. How could they sleep? Thus, they all gathered together. Should we summon the flying mystical beasts later? They were surrounded by water. The only way to escape was to summon the flying mystical beasts. Forget it. Qi Xianxian snorted. The mentors had said before they left that they had to rely on themselves for this trip. They couldn't summon any flying mystical beasts for help. Then what should we do? Little Fatty shouted, "Do the mentors mean that we have to think of a way to cross the remaining sea?" "I think that's what the mentors mean." Lu Yu nodded and said, "If we could summon the flying mystical beasts, we would have done it from the start." Sigh. Everyone sighed in unison. They couldn't help but grit their teeth when they thought of the deceptive methods of those few instructors. While they were talking, everyone clearly felt the hull of the boat shake heavily, and the bumps became more and more severe. "It's over. It's over. You won't be able to get through the night. Prepare to save him," Auber said as he stood up. "It's not like you can't summon flying Xian beasts." Hua Tao was speechless. "Why don't we discuss this with the mentors? We can't be so inflexible. Now that the situation is urgent and special, we should..." Dong dong dong. After a few knocks on the door, Zhou Danjin and the other instructors walked in. Zhou Danjin raised his eyebrows and asked, "What are you all doing here at Jojo's place? Tell us about the current situation. It seems like the wind and waves are getting stronger. I wonder if the boat will suddenly capsize in the middle of the night." All the students. "No matter how unreliable he is, can he be more unreliable than you bunch of useless teachers? However, as mentors, we still have to explain the rules of the trip to you. If any of you summon your mystical beast during the trip, then don't blame the mentors for being merciless and deducting 100 credits from you." Auber and the rest rolled their eyes at him. Chapter 1832. Instructor, this isn't good. Little Fatty hurriedly said, "Look, the situation is urgent. There are still so many people outside waiting for us to save them. Don't worry, the instructors will go and take care of the people in the main cabin. Just take care of yourselves," Zhou Danjin said, then turned and walked out of Auber's room with Wei Wei and the others. The group of students looked at each other. After a moment, Mata couldn't help but curse in a low voice, "A bunch of idiots. What should we do now?" They couldn't summon their flying beasts. Were they planning on having them swim back? Auber reluctantly took out a small porcelain bottle, poured out 2 pills, and gave one to Duanmu Qing and Little Fatty. "Let's act according to the situation later." Since the instructors didn't let them use their flying beasts, did that mean they wanted them to continue flying? Although they had been on the boat for quite some time, it would still take at least 2 days to reach Poland Manor. How could they fly by themselves? Moreover, there wasn't even a place to rest. Jojo. Little Fatty suddenly jumped up in shock and stammered, Don't we have that crimson nimbus boat? As he spoke, he purposely lowered his voice, as if he had a guilty conscience. He glanced back and forth, as if he was afraid that the instructors would suddenly jump out from a crack in the ground. Aba nodded and glanced at him. Duan Muqing said indifferently, The problem is how to avoid the eyes and ears of the instructors. Right. Those idiot instructors were people who wouldn't even let them use their flying beasts. How could they possibly let them use the Crimson Nimbus boat? Little Fatty's voice lowered even more. Jojo, tell us what to do. We'll do as you say. Aba glanced at him and didn't say anything. He walked to the window and looked at the gradually darkening sky. Under the bumpy ride, they really couldn't eat much. They just casually gnawed on a peach to finish their meal. When night fell completely, the boat was indeed tossed up and down by the huge wind and waves. It looked like it wouldn't be able to hold on for more than a quarter of an hour. The captain tried his best to get someone to control the rudder, but the wind and waves were too strong. The boat was tossed back and forth by the current. All of a sudden, the group of women sitting in the main cabin heard a loud bang with their hearts on tenterhooks. It was as if some large fish had rammed into their mast. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. Immediately after, the women felt as if they were sitting on pins and needles, as if the deck under their feet seemed to be creaking and cracking. This sound was simply enough to shatter everyone's nerves. Mrs. Chi carried her daughter, Huan Huan, and jumped up. She hugged Huan Huan tightly in her arms, and her face turned pale from fright. Zhou Danjin walked out quickly with a sullen face and roared, Everyone, come out! S's, teat. T.S. The commoners who were scrambling to get out of the cabin were all shocked. Finally, under the urging and help of Instructor Zhou and the others, they all boarded the Flying Centipede. Arbus also came out. They glanced at the Flying Centipede without batting an eyelid. Chapter 1833. Instructor, you're leaving us behind just like that? The little fatty couldn't help but be furious as he shouted in a rough voice. What do you mean we're leaving? Zhou Danjin slapped the back of his head. The instructors are going to help move these people away. Don't get involved and come over on your own. I believe that all of you will definitely work together and think of a way to cross the remaining sea to meet up with the instructors. After Zhou Danjin's string of extravagant praises, all the students gave him a single expression: indifference. All right. I won't talk to you anymore. The instructors are going to... Instructor Wei Wei and the others have already left. Zhou Danjin turned around and saw the Flying Centipede flapping its wings as it flew up with a group of people on its back. Zhou Danjin couldn't help but get angry as he resisted the urge to curse. Damn it, Wei Wei, what are you doing? I can't sit anymore. You can fly by yourself for a while. Zhou Danjin, he saw Wei Wei standing on top of the Flying Centipede's head while the other three instructors followed suit and posed in a peculiar posture as they squeezed behind Wei Wei. From the looks of it, this Flying Centipede had reached the upper limit of the number of people it could carry. However, this Flying Centipede was already carrying hundreds of people on its back. Now that it was flying, it seemed to be especially strenuous. Who knew how long it could last? Wei Wei also frowned helplessly. Instructor Hu, you guys can fly for a while before coming up. He was worried that his Flying Centipede's body wouldn't be able to take it. Actually, the Flying Centipede could only carry 300 people at most. However, there were already 400 to 500 people squeezed onto the Flying Centipede, causing this flying spirit beast to feel the pressure. All right. Instructor Hu and the others nodded. Everyone shamelessly abandoned the little Instructor Zhou and left on the Flying Centipede without a guilty conscience. The little fatty looked at Instructor Zhou's green and red face and couldn't help but burst out laughing. He raised his meaty claws and shook Instructor Zhou's hand forcefully. Instructor, welcome to our flying team. Later, Our classmate Duanmu will lead the team in front and will be at the back. Just maintain the formation. Duanmu Qing's mouth twitched. Teacher Zhou was already very angry, but the little fatty still went to provoke him. The little fatty smiled and said, "Instructor Zhou, I wonder if you've seen a wild goose before? That's how wild geese fly. One moment they're in a row, the next moment they're in a row. Let's learn from them later." "It's fine, instructor. It's just a 2-day flight." Scram! Instructor Zhou flew into a rage out of humiliation. He lifted his leg and kicked the little fatty's butt. The little fatty covered his butt and looked back at him with an aggrieved expression. "Why did you kick me? What we should do now is to be of one mind as teachers and students. Why don't you lead the team and lead us?" Mata chuckled and coughed a few times. He looked at Instructor Zhou, whose face was ashen. "Instructor, I think that little fatty's suggestion is very good. You will be our leader, flying all the way, and we will shout the slogan from behind. Teacher Zhou of the Top Academy, Teacher Zhou of the Top Academy will definitely encourage you along the way." Zhou Dongjin's eyebrows twitched as he yelled at them, "You students can fly by yourselves. Instructor, I'll take my leave first." Instructor, you're not coming with us?" Mata called out eccentrically. Chapter 1834. Seeing Instructor Zhou's speed increase and disappear into the night, little fatty couldn't help but burst into laughter. "You're the one who didn't want to follow us." At this moment, the ship was already sinking slowly in the wind and waves. Everyone leaped into the air and set up a defensive barrier around themselves to block the torrential rain. Abba turned to look at the broken ship and frowned slightly. He suddenly asked, "Did you see that Zhang guy?" "I purposely took a look just now. Zhang Wudan and Tai Feng weren't on Instructor Wei Wei's flying centipede," Qi Xianxian said with a frown. It was possible that the crippled Zhang Wudan had already been buried in the fish's stomach. However, Tai Feng only had some superficial wounds and would recover completely after a few days of rest. How could a mystic cultivator like him not be able to escape from the soaked cabin? Abba retracted his gaze and waved his hand. Everyone saw a huge 3-story ship seemingly fly into the sea from outer space, riding the wind and waves. After it entered the water, it stirred up huge waves with a splash. Everyone was overjoyed. They finally didn't have to suffer the wind in the storm. Everyone had a ship. Little Fatty was especially overjoyed. With a ship, he didn't have to fly bitterly anymore. He even earned a flight pill from Jojo for free. After Abba and the others boarded the ship, they heard Qi Xianxian, Little Fatty, Mata and the others exclaim in surprise. This time, even Duanmu Qing, who had always been steady, revealed astonishment in his eyes. Huatao couldn't help but exclaim, "This ship is too luxurious and exquisite. I really didn't expect that an old man I've never met before would be so generous as to give Jojo such a spacious and luxurious ship." Mata sighed with emotion. "Why can't I encounter such a good thing?" Abba glanced at him. "Aren't you going to choose a room?" I choose first." Qi Xianxian skipped towards the cabin. "You can go to the 3rd floor," Abba called out. "Wow!" Qi Xianxian cheered and raised her hand. "I'll stay next door to Jojo." "Then let's stay on the 2nd floor." Since the 2 girls lived on the 3rd floor, for the sake of convenience, Duanmu Qing and the other men went to the 2nd floor. After each of them had their own room, the little fatty was surprised to find that there were still many luxuriously decorated rooms on the 2nd floor. This was a big ship that looked ordinary on the outside, but had a different world on the inside. Are all the people on the ship mechanical men? Oh my God! This was simply too extravagant. Using so many mechanical puppets at the helm to deliver tea and water? Whoa! Lu Yu ignored it and hit the snow leopard that passed in front of him. He felt that the leopard was looking at him like he was a country bumpkin. Abba glanced at them. "Why are you so excited? Don't you want to sleep? Wake up early tomorrow morning." "Wait!" Little Fatty suddenly shouted, "Why can't I feel any bumps at all?" Duanmu Qing glanced at him and said helplessly, This is the Scarlet Firmament Blue Wave, not some ordinary boat. Stability is normal. Wow. I can finally have a good night's sleep. Qi Xianxian cheered and returned to her room first. After a few seconds, she opened the door again and stuck her head out. She grinned and asked, "I want bath water." "Just instruct the mechanical men." This group of people was different from the others who struggled in the wind and waves. They slept until early in the morning and opened their doors energetically. Chapter 1835. Haha, the sky is clear. Looking over, the sky was clear and blue as if it had been washed by water, transparent and clean. I slept so well last night. Jojo. Qi Xianxian saw the door to the room next door open and quickly ran over. She chuckled and said, "What breakfast is there?" "Steamed buns, porridge, fruits, pastries and snacks. We have everything." Arba pulled her towards the dining room on the first floor of the ship. "Wow, I feel so blessed." Looking at the sumptuous breakfast on the table, Qi Xianxian held her small face with a love-struck expression. "All right, sit down and eat." Arba called Duanmu Qing and the others who had just entered the dining room to sit down. 2 to 3 mechanical puppets quickly set up the plates and tidied up the tablecloths. They looked abnormally hard-working. "Jojo, luckily we had your ship this time. Otherwise, we would have been killed by the instructors. In the situation yesterday, there were strong winds and huge waves. If they were swept into the sea, not even their bones could be found." Arba drank a mouthful of porridge and looked up at Qi Xianxian. "Hurry up and eat. Do you think Instructor Wei Wei brought such a large group of people and left? Have they reached Poland Manor yet?" "Definitely not." Little Fatty chewed on a piece of plum blossom cake and chuckled. "However, compared to Instructor Wei Wei and the others, I want to know more about Instructor Zhou's situation. Instructor Zhou, are you all right after flying through the night with strong winds and heavy rain?" Ha 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 ha. Everyone looked at each other and laughed tacitly. Arba glanced at them. "We are about a day's journey from Poland Manor. When we are about to reach Poland Manor, Jojo, put away the red firmament blue waves and pretend to fly for a while," Mata suggested. Arba nodded. Actually, she didn't really want to fly either. Moreover, looking at Instructor Zhou's ashen face and defeated expression, it seemed like he didn't really want to fly across the sea. After everyone had eaten their fill, they let the mechanical puppets cut a plate of oranges. They ate while discussing how to get the instructors back one by one. Now that he had tricked Instructor Zhou, Instructor Wei Wei was equally despicable. He had to do the same to him. Qiao Mu gazed at them silently before saying expressionlessly, "I suggest that we find a moonless and windy night to simply put Instructor Wei Wei in a gunny sack and give him a violent beating." Everyone was speechless. "If I use the talisman on him, he will definitely come after me," Arba said calmly. "I'll just put a sack over him and punch him. Even if he suspects that I did it, he won't have any evidence." "Good idea. In this way, he can only pinch his nose and accept this beating." Who would have thought that the first person to jump out in agreement would actually be Jiang Shaoxin, who usually put on a serious face all day long? After a heated discussion, they unanimously decided that they would do as Jojo had said when they arrived at Poland Mansion. They would find a moonless and windy night. Help! Help! Why does this voice sound so familiar? Isn't this Instructor Zhou's voice? Qi Xuanxuan's ears were sharp. She subconsciously stood up and walked towards the deck. Everyone followed her out. When they looked carefully, their eyebrows twitched. Zhou Danjin was hugging a piece of wood and floating on the sea. He was waving at their ship. Chapter 1836. We were just talking about Instructor Zhou. I didn't expect to see him floating on the sea in the blink of an eye. Everyone held back their laughter and looked up at Instructor Zhou, who was floating on the sea with a piece of wood in his arms. Zhou Dongjin's eyes lit up. Naturally, he also noticed the group of little brats standing on the boat. He quickly waved his right hand at Arba and the others and shouted, Jojo, Mata, Fatty, students, quickly pull the instructor up. Everyone stood on the boat unmoved and stared at Instructor Zhou, who was floating on the sea with a piece of wood in his arms. Mata smiled and asked, "Instructor, why are you in the sea?" Instructor Zhou was like a drowning animal. He hugged the piece of wood and said angrily, "It's a long story. Come, throw a rope down and pull the instructor up first." Fatty quickly shook his head and said, "That won't do. Instructor, if we pull you up, you'll accuse us of cheating and deduct our academy points. What should we do?" Zhou Danjin immediately said angrily, "Does the instructor look like such an unreasonable person?" Fatty touched his chin. "I feel like the instructors are all like that." Zhou Danjin was speechless. "Stop talking nonsense and quickly pull the instructor up. Don't worry, you saved the instructor. Of course, the instructor won't deduct your points." "That won't do. If we pull you up later, you won't admit it and will cheat us again. We won't be able to take it." Mata shook his head and said, "Bullsh *T." Instructor Zhou cursed furiously in his heart, but on the surface, he still smiled and said, No. Instructor, we'll only believe you if you write a guarantee." Zhou Danjin was speechless. "These King brats. Alright. Pull me up first. See if I don't kill all of you brats when I get up." Zhou Danjin couldn't breathe. If he hadn't flown for half the night and fought against the storm for so long before finally falling into the sea exhausted, would he be so King aggrieved? Wait. Where did these brats get such a big boat? Looking at the situation, the brats seemed to have rested well while he fought against the storm for an entire night. Ao. Instructor Zhou only wanted to go crazy. If he could, he wished he could drag the little fatty and his gang over and give them a good beating. "Hurry up and pull the teacher up." Zhou Danjin gritted his teeth. Duanmu Qing looked at him helplessly, then glanced at Aba. Seeing that she didn't object, he waved his hand. A green vine stretched out from between his fingers and flew in front of Instructor Zhou in a crooked manner. Zhou Danjin hurriedly reached out to grab the green vine, but he felt his body lighten as he was pulled into the air by Duanmu Qing. In the next second, he landed steadily in front of the deck. "Tutor, please sign this." The little fatty handed over a letter written with a pen and stuffed it into Zhou Danjin's hand with a smile. Zhou Danjin was speechless. Why did he want to kill them so badly? "Mentor, you're not tricking us again, are you?" A double-headed hammer suddenly appeared in the little fatty's hand. From the looks of it, if he didn't agree to sign the letter of guarantee, the little fatty would throw him into the sea, right? Zhou Danjin was so angry that he pointed at the fatty who had a sincere expression on his face. He angrily grabbed the pen and signed his name with a few strokes. The little fatty took the letter of guarantee from Instructor Zhou with satisfaction and stuffed it into his pocket. He was grinning so widely that his teeth could be seen. Chapter 1837. "Instructor, please come in." "Get lost." Zhou Danjin glared fiercely at the little fatty, then walked towards the cabin on the first floor. He wanted to take a good bath and eat something, then he would deal with these brats after that. The little fatty stuck out his tongue behind him, then turned his head and said to Auber with lingering fear, "Jojo, it seems like the storm yesterday was really big." Even Instructor Zhou could not hold out for most of the night, and was thrown into the sea by the strong winds and heavy rain. Needless to say, these brats would have been swept away by the waves at any moment. Auber nodded, and the group returned to the dining hall to eat some fruits. Not long after, Instructor Zhou, who had cleaned himself up and was no longer in a sorry state, slipped out of the small cabin. He looked at everyone from head to toe, then asked suspiciously, "This ship? Where did you guys come from?" Hearing this, Mata immediately slapped his thigh and said, "You might not believe me, Instructor Zhou, but this ship drove itself here not long after you left. We asked for help from the big ship, and seeing that no one was willing to help, we decided to board the ship together." "That's right, when we boarded the ship, we realized that there was no master on the ship at all, and it was all controlled by mechanical people. The little fatty continued to spout nonsense with a sincere face. "We were overjoyed, instructor, you don't know, but we were thinking of you just now. We were worried that you would be fine the whole night, but we were fine. We took shelter from the storm on this ship, and the ship is stable." Zhou Danjin was speechless. F***ck, he felt that these brats were not telling the truth. How could it be so coincidental? Oh. He left for a few minutes, and the ship drove itself here? Wasn't this a joke? No, I was looking at this ship. Instructor Zhou walked around the dining hall, then looked at the gorgeous furnishings and murals around him. He stared at one of the murals, and his expression suddenly changed. This is the legendary Crimson Nimbus ship. The group of brats, who underestimated Instructor Zhou's education level, looked at each other, and at the same time, revealed a confused expression. Instructor Zhou, what are you talking about? What Crimson Nimbus ship? This is a legendary sacred artifact. Zhou Danjin frowned and pointed at a mural. Look at this mural. It's the entire process of craftsmen crafting the ship. Among them, there was even a grandmaster who was using a refining furnace to refine the essence of the materials. This process seems to have taken a long time. Instructor Zhou kept looking at the moving murals. Behind him, the group of students looked at each other and couldn't help but criticize in their hearts. They stayed here for a night and didn't pay attention to the mural at all. They just skimmed through it. How could they have the time to study the contents of the mural in detail? Indeed, a mentor was a mentor. Although he usually didn't look very reliable, when it came to knowledge, all the students could only sigh in admiration. Where the hell did you get this ship? Zhou Danjin looked at the people of Arbor with a serious face. This thing can't appear in the middle world. Tell us the truth. This group of brats had better not provoke a powerful enemy for a mere worldly possession of a saint tool. But you don't believe me. I already said that it came riding the wind and breaking the waves, so we just went with the flow. Mata rolled his eyes and said, Mentor, don't worry, we definitely didn't steal this ship. Chapter 1838. Instructor Zhou looked at everyone speechlessly, temporarily believing their nonsense. He nodded and said, All right then, we have to hurry forward and see if we can catch up with Wei Wei and the others. Even though Wei Wei had been heartless to him, he still couldn't be unjust to him. Arbor lowered his eyes silently. Duanmu Qing coughed lightly and said, Let's try our best to hurry forward, but we can't be sure when this ship will turn back. What do you mean? Duanmu Qing means, didn't it sail with the current? Maybe after a while, it will turn back on its own. Zhou Danjin's eyes brightened slightly. You mean, the owner of this ship came specially to save you? Then, after sending you to a safe place, it will immediately turn back? Everyone nodded their heads in unison. That's right, instructor, it's exactly as you said. Zhou Danjin immediately smiled. Instructor, I wonder which expert saved you. If there's a chance, I would like to meet him and thank him in person. Everyone laughed dryly in succession, and they all subconsciously looked at Xiao Mu, who was standing silently on the side. Do you want some for breakfast? Yes. Zhou Danjin immediately raised his hands and feet to cheer. He had been through strong winds and huge waves the entire night. The experience was simply too horrible to look at. It was fine if he didn't eat breakfast, but once he mentioned it, his entire stomach would bulge. Not long after, the mechanical men brought 4 types of snacks, 4 types of porridge, and side dishes to Instructor Zhou. A plate of butterflies was placed in front of Instructor Zhou. The instructor was immediately moved to tears. He picked up a piece of pastry with meat stuffing and stuffed it into his mouth, sighing with emotion, This breakfast is too sumptuous. I haven't had such rich snacks and porridge for many years. That's right, they thought so too at that time. In this day and age, to be able to eat 7 to 8 different types of dishes for breakfast, he was definitely not a typical nouveau riche. After the ship steadily sailed for a distance, Xiao Mu could more or less see the flag on the largest city along the coast of Poland Prefecture. Then, she secretly ordered the golems to feign a return voyage. Everyone rose into the air and left the scarlet firmament blue waves. Zhou Danjin stood in the air, his eyes watching the scarlet Nimbus blue wave ship steadily and quickly leaving. His face revealed a slightly emotional expression. TSK. TSK. I wonder which master owns this ship. Based on the defensive ability and speed of this ship, I reckon that even if a God-rank realm expert were to arrive, he would probably be unable to break through the outer layer of defense in a short period of time, right? Looking at the scarlet firmament blue wave ship slowly disappearing into the horizon, Zhou Danjin didn't know that the rich senior he worshipped was actually Arbor. Of course, he didn't know that the scarlet firmament blue wave ship had only been taken back by the little water child. After flying for a while, they saw a huge flying centipede resting on the surface of the water. The group of commoners in the cabin had also safely gotten off the centipede's back, but many of them ran to the side and vomited as soon as they got off. There was nothing he could do about it. He was lucky that he didn't fall off the centipede's back after being tossed around by the wind and rain all night. On the side, Instructor Wei Wei's back was facing them, as if he was arguing with someone. The other person suddenly pulled out the sword at his waist, as if he was going to attack. Wei Wei couldn't help but be furious, but he was stopped by Instructor who was standing on the side, and pulled on his sleeve. Chapter 1839. Arbor and the others descended from the sky and landed beside Instructor Wei Wei. They immediately attracted the attention of the group of soldiers guarding the city gate. The group of soldiers stared at them sternly. Each of them pulled out their sabers from their waists, as though they would immediately attack if Arbor and the others dared to move. What happened? Arbor asked coldly. He was actually not very interested in this matter. Instructor who said, you all rushed over. You're quite fast. It's said that there's trouble in the city and people are being arrested, so the city gate is temporarily closed. It's said that it will only open in the evening. How can it be in the evening? It was not even noon yet. Making these people wait outside the city gate for 4 to 6 hours was nothing to martial artists, but it was too unkind to the old, weak, women, and children. Arbor glanced at Mrs. Qi and her daughter who were sitting paralyzed at the side. He took a few steps forward, bent down slightly, and touched Huan's slightly hot forehead. He took out a medicine bottle from his sleeve and gave it to Mrs. Qi. Feed Huan one. She should feel better after a while. Mrs. Qi hurriedly took it and thanked him. What happened in the city? Who knows? A few fishermen who were also waiting to enter the city angrily said, I heard that a few strange spies sneaked into our city lord mansion. The leader seems to have a very rare plant-type spirit beast. Arbor blinked his eyes. They stole some valuable information from your city lord mansion? I didn't hear about that. That person shook his head and said, what we know is also very limited. Anyway, the city lord mansion issued a notice saying that they want to capture those people alive. I don't know what heartless things they did to make the city lord so angry. Instructor, why don't we stop wasting time here? Directly ride the flying spirit beast to that academy in Poland Prefecture? Heavenly Academy. Alright, Heavenly Academy. How about it? Hearing this, Wei Wei thought for a moment before nodding. Alright. Their time was limited to begin with, and they really couldn't afford to waste time. Naturally, they couldn't just wait here. However, Wei Wei glanced at the group of people who had escaped from the ship and were now like frosted eggplants after a night of torrential rain. He could not bear to see them like that. What about them? Duanmu Qing glanced at him indifferently, then retracted his gaze and lowered his eyes. Teacher, you can't save the entire world. They had already saved most of the people on the ship, which was already considered extremely benevolent. How could they be obligated to help them after they entered the city? If that was the case, one person wouldn't be able to cope no matter how much energy he had. Wei Wei couldn't help but be stunned, and then he sighed and nodded. All right then, let them wait here for the city gates to open. They boarded Instructor Wei Wei's flying centipede and soared into the sky. Shuttling through the clouds, they headed straight for Dai Zong Mountain. In the city, a black figure suddenly stopped and looked up at the sky, only to see a flying centipede turn into a faint shadow and disappear into the horizon. The sudden stop almost caused Dao Wuji to bump into his back. He couldn't help but grumble, "Boss, why are you in a daze?" "I seem to have sensed Jojo's aura," Prince Mo muttered to himself. "Ah! Boss, what are you talking about? Tomorrow, the 6th watch period will resume." Chapter 1840. At that moment, he really felt Jojo's aura, but it came and went quickly. Prince Mo narrowed his eyes and looked up at the distant sky. After hesitating for a second, he said, "I'll go take a look first." Hearing this, Infinite Blade immediately followed. "Boss, if we're leaving together." The city in front of them was under martial law. To them, leaving or staying was a piece of cake. If they really wanted to leave this city, it would be too easy. However, Prince Mo originally planned to scout for information in the city first. But now, it seemed that Boss Missouri was leaving. Naturally, they didn't want to stay in this godforsaken place. Although this kind of coastal city was the largest city near the coast, in the eyes of Infinite Blade and the others, it was still pitifully small. Little Tai Sui glanced at Infinite Blade and snorted. "If it weren't for someone alerting the city lord, would we have been hunted all over the city?" Infinite Blade pursed his lips and said unhappily, "I didn't do it on purpose. When we came out of the passage, if it weren't for the fact that I fell in a bad position, how could I have fallen into the city lord's room and seen his scandal?" When Infinite Blade heard this, he rolled his eyes at Little Tai Sui. "How can you blame me for this? How would I know that when we were teleported out, there would be such a big deviation?" Infinite Blade snorted. "You were teleported to other places in the city lord's residence, and I fell into the city lord's room. This isn't something that I can control, right? If it were any of you who fell into the city lord's room like I did and saw that thing, wouldn't you scream? This is a basic human reaction, okay?" Little Tai Sui glared at him and said unhappily, "When that kid fell into the crocodile pool, he didn't scream like you did." Infinite Blade snorted. "How can that be the same? I'd rather fall into the crocodile pool myself." Falling into the crocodile pool was better than falling into the city lord's room. Little Tai Sui gave him a disdainful look and then ignored him. Mo Lien naturally wasn't in the mood to listen to their bickering. He beckoned with his hand, and 7th Yen appeared beside him. "Little 7, bring me to chase after them," Mo Lien ordered in a deep voice. Yen 7 nodded. Just as he was about to transform into a dragon and soar into the sky, an angry roar came from the corner of the street. "Surround them." Prince Mo turned around with a frown and saw a fat middle-aged man leading several hundred level 7 and level 8 mystic cultivators. He waved his hand and surrounded them. This lineup was naturally enough to scare people to death on Seekong Planet. So many mystic cultivators had suddenly appeared. But in the middle 6 prefectures, it was nothing. In a small coastal city, there were not many spiritual masters under the city lord, but there were quite a few mystic masters. Little Tai Sui glanced at Infinite Blade, and his meaning was clear: resolve the trouble you caused yourself. Dao Wuji didn't need Little Tai Sui to say anything. He immediately took a few steps forward and stood in front of everyone. He looked at the city lord, who looked at him with disdain. "City lord, what a coincidence. We meet again. Go." How could the fat city lord be in the mood to talk nonsense with him? He pointed 2 fingers, and the large group of mystic cultivators behind him swarmed toward them. Chapter 1841. During this short delay, Mo Lien looked up at the sky, but he couldn't see any traces of the flying centipede anymore. Crack! The little morning glory squatting on her shoulder opened its petals, revealing 2 rows of small serrated steel teeth. It looked at the fat city lord's group with an eager look. Mo Lien raised her hand and pressed it, indicating that it should behave. Then her gaze swept indifferently over the fat city lord's group, and she glanced sideways at Dao Wuji. "Take care of them." "Okay, boss, don't worry. Leave this matter to me." Dao Wuji swept into the fat city lord's group like a gust of wind. He didn't seem to make a move, but after a series of punches and kicks, a large number of guards fell around the fat city lord. The city lord was so shocked that his face changed dramatically, and he hurriedly took a few steps back. The fat city lord's eyes looked up and down at Dao Wuji in surprise. He saw that this young man was quite handsome, but he didn't look like someone with such high cultivation. He could take down so many guards around him in one move, so he didn't know what his cultivation was. "Do you want to fight again?" Dao Wuji stood with his arms crossed. He only used 10% of his strength to take down so many people in front of him. The fat city lord had to retreat and didn't dare to send people to fight with him again. Little Tai Sui glanced at Dao Wuji from the side and sneered, "Take it easy. If you kill the people of the Middle Realm, you might be caught and locked up for 8 to 10 years. Little Tai Sui raised his finger and pointed to the sky. Dao Wuji naturally understood and waved his hand with a smile. "How could that be? I just got out of that damn place." "Don't forget, you didn't get out with your own ability." Little Tai Sui rolled his eyes at him. "Only those who break through by themselves can temporarily gain freedom. As for you, Humph." Dao Wuji's face was hot from Little Tai Sui's snort, and he turned his head and stopped talking to him. Every time he talked to Little Tai Sui, he felt like he was taking the initiative to put his face to it, and he was always annoyed. "Get out of here!" Infinite Blade roared at the fat city lord. "Are you waiting to be beaten up?" If he wasn't worried that the heavenly Dao would show its might and capture him back to the Tower of Punishment, he would really want to kill these noisy fellows. The city lord took several steps back. He knew that even if he and the mystic cultivators around him worked together, they might not be a match for these strange people in front of him, so he quickly turned and ran with his men. The ordinary people in the streets and alleys were also used to seeing eye signals. When they realized that even their city lords couldn't do anything to these young people in front of them, they all retreated back to their homes and closed their shops. After a burst of commotion, the fat city lord and his people retreated completely. The entire street was empty. Only a pitifully thin yellow-spotted cat in the corner could be seen jumping down from the straw shed. Everyone looked at each other. They didn't expect Dao Wuji to make such a move and cause such a big commotion. But it made sense. Dao Wuji, a minor spiritual supremacy, was obviously not enough in front of the immortal supremacies in the tower. But if he was placed in this group of mystic cultivators, it was tantamount to a fierce tiger entering a flock of sheep. How could they not be afraid? A faint shadow emerged from Emolien's hand. Everyone looked at it and couldn't help but be stunned. Fairy Ginkgo called out sweetly, "Young Master Mo, what are you doing?" Chapter 1842. Which normal person would be willing to take out a strand of divine sense so easily? But this young Master Mo didn't even blink. He took out several strands of divine sense in a row and sent them in several directions. They didn't know what he was anxiously looking for. Fairy Ginkgo pursed her lips and didn't care that young Master Mo ignored her. She swayed her slender waist and asked in a delicate voice, "Mo?" Emolien ignored her and walked past her. With a light leap, he jumped onto the back of Seventh Yen, who was transforming into a dragon and ascending to heaven. "Hey, boss! You can't leave us behind!" Dao Wuji hurriedly waved his hand and shouted. "Keep up! Keep up!" He just wanted to ask, who the hell could keep up with the sacred beast Golden Dragon's speed? Unless... Dao Wuji looked anxiously at Little Tai Sui. Little Tai Sui snorted at him and angrily waved his hand to summon a beast with 4 hooves like a horse, a tiger's back, a bear's waist, and a dragon's head and antlers. With a kick of its 4 hooves, the beast rushed into the air. Little Tai Sui jumped up and landed steadily on its back. Dao Wuji hurriedly jumped up with a smile. Thin Tuchuo, the Luo brothers, Fairy Ginkgo, and the Peony Fairy all asked Little Tai Sui to give them a ride. The beast beside Little Tai Sui was a rare sacred beast, the Qilin. Its dark blue body emitted a strange light and looked gorgeous at first glance. Only the Qilin, which was also a sacred beast, could keep up with Prince Mo's golden dragon. "Thank you, Little Tai Sui." They all thanked Little Tai Sui. There was nothing he could do about it. This little guy was petty. If he didn't first greet him properly and thank him, Perhaps this black-hearted guy would kick him down from the Chelan's back halfway through the journey. For the time being, leaving aside the group that followed the Crown Prince, Aber's group rode instructor Wei Wei's flying centipede all the way to Mount Daizong. After 4 hours, they decided to rest. The flying centipede had flown with hundreds of people for an entire night, and it was already exhausted. It was already quite good that it was able to fly for 4 hours. When Aber saw the big fellow lying on the side listlessly, he frowned and walked over. From a few steps away, he threw a pill to it. To be honest, she really didn't like animals with so many legs. The little fellow, whose face was filled with disdain, tossed a pill to Qi Xianxian and sat down beside her to rest. Wei Wei glanced at everyone and said, "It can't fly anymore today. Looking at the situation, it's getting late. Let's rest here for the night and leave for Daizong Mountain tomorrow morning." Naturally, no one had any objections. They each took out some dry rations from their inner worlds and ate a few mouthfuls. They felt that the dry rations were not very tasty. Mata looked at Aber and said, "Jojo, let's make a fire and make some mushroom soup." To be honest, after eating all kinds of things with Jojo, they really couldn't swallow dry rations all of a sudden. Aber nodded and planned to go to the nearby forest to pick up some twigs and other things. Everyone cheered and hurriedly got up to pick up the twigs and branches with her. They would make a fire and let Jojo make some delicious mushroom soup and reward them with some. Just thinking about their simple life made them happy. Aber shook his head helplessly. It was just a little mushroom soup. Was it enough to make them this happy? Chapter 1843. In addition, ever since Instructor Zhou ate that sumptuous breakfast, Aber always felt that the way he looked at her was a little creepy every time it was mealtime. It was now nearing the end of November. Once night fell, the weather would turn slightly cooler. Aber, Qi Xianxian, and the others entered the forest. Everyone spread out and picked up branches in all directions. However, after Qiao Mu bent down to pick up 2 sticks, she stopped and cast a sidelong glance behind her before coldly saying, "Since you've come, why are you still hiding? Come out." There was a rustle at the back of the forest. Then, 2 men with decent looks walked out. 2 pairs of cold eyes swept mercilessly towards Aber. One of them laughed coldly and raised a thumb. "The little girl is quite sensitive. It's a pity that just relying on the sensitivity of your spiritual sense is completely insufficient." As he spoke, that person quickly arrived in front of Aber. A dagger appeared in his hand and he slashed horizontally towards Aber's neck. This was a savage and ruthless knife that wanted to buy her life. Aber naturally didn't know who was so vicious as to chase her here and buy her life. However, she was very clear about one thing. She wouldn't let any of these people go. They were already here to take her life. Why would she be polite to them? Aber's eyes narrowed. Dozens of talismans flew up and landed on her body. After the mystic guiding talisman array was activated, Aber immediately rushed towards one of the people without hesitation. She even slashed her dagger at his throat. What kind of joke was this? Someone was already pointing a dagger at her throat. How could she be polite and hesitate? That person was clearly stunned. It was as if he didn't react. He didn't expect Aber to act so quickly. In a daze, he nimbly retreated backwards. However, his shoulder was unexpectedly crushed by a leopard claw. That person's expression didn't change. He quickly took out something from his pocket and threw it in Aber's direction without hesitation. If this hit, even if Aber didn't lose a life, he would probably lose half of his life. Aber was not alarmed. He coldly glanced at the other party, then turned around and shot back like lightning. In his hand was clearly a spiritual energy ball. Moreover, it was a spiritual energy ball that was around level 13 or 14. Naturally, it was very powerful. Aber threw out a series of defensive talismans to surround himself and immediately activated his eggshell defensive barrier. Although she managed to dodge it at the first moment, the explosion of the spiritual energy ball still affected her. However, she had added several layers of defense, so she wasn't affected too much. These 2 men looked extremely ferocious, and they seemed to be fighting without regard for their own lives. After one of them threw a spiritual energy ball at him, the other immediately took his place. He stepped forward and took out a long sword. As he waved it, a thick water spirit condensed into 7 or 8 palm-sized balls of water spirit. They flew towards Arbor. However, those water balls were really insignificant in Arbor's eyes. With the holy water she controlled, she only needed to release a slight pressure to cover the power of those water balls. Arbor's gaze turned sharp. The water in her hand was like 5 thin snakes that suddenly drilled out from between her fingers. They directly collided with the 7 or 8 small water balls thrown by the other person. After a few bangs, the 7 or 8 water balls were completely swallowed up by Arbor's water spirit power. Chapter 1844. Cough, cough, cough. That person looked up at Arbor in shock and coughed a few times. The other man was clearly stunned as well. Then, he raised his hand and clenched his fist as he stared at Arbor with an indignant expression. Arbor didn't care. Since they were already mortal enemies, why should she care about the disrespect of 2 dead people? Arbor reached out and grabbed the ferrule in her hand. She looked at the 2 coldly and said, "Before you die, do you have any last words?" "Tui." The 2 spat on the ground at the same time. Very good. These 2 bastards succeeded in provoking the anger in her heart. In the next second, Arbor used the wood spirit to form a vine whip full of thorns and barbs. Without hesitation, she slapped the left side of the 2 men's faces. Ah! The 2 men took a step back, anger flashing in their eyes. Without a second word, they simultaneously took out level 13 and level 14 spiritual energy balls and smashed them at Xiao Mu. After throwing the spiritual energy balls, they didn't look at Arbor again. It was as if they were certain that Arbor wouldn't survive the attack of the 2 spiritual energy balls. The 2 men retreated a few hundred steps before stopping. They coldly glanced at the deep hole in the forest ground. One of them covered the wound on his shoulder from the snow leopard's claw and looked at the snow leopard that was quickly leaping toward them. His expression changed slightly and he said, "Let's go." "Go? Do you think you can go?" Arbor covered her small hand with a layer of Vajra talisman. She punched one of the men's back. The man stumbled forward a few steps and spat out a mouthful of blood. Arbor looked at her coldly. The ferrule in her hand turned into a line of fire as she continued to attack the man without hesitation. She didn't care about Zhonghu morals. Naturally, she followed the principle of take your life when you're sick, and didn't give him any chance to counterattack. A purple flame ignited on the man's body. The man rolled back and forth in the purple flame and howled as he hurriedly extinguished the purple flame on his body. But was that even possible? Even though there was another person beside him helping him extinguish the flames, there was still nothing he could do. The snow leopard pounced forward and flipped the other person to the ground. Its claws stepped on his chest and stomped down hard. Roar! At this moment, there was another burst of noise in the woods. Xiao Mu turned her head and saw a dozen masked men in black clothes abruptly appear in front of her. One of them looked at Arbor's actions and his eyes couldn't help but sharpen. "Everyone, let's go. Kill this woman and bring her head back." When Xiao Mu heard this, her slightly cold brows creased slightly. "Who are you?" This group of people looked like men of sacrifice who were carrying out a mission in the family, not like the disciples of the Clear Sky sect. The leader of the masked men didn't say anything more to her. Instead, he waved his hand and ordered all the masked men in black to surround and kill her. It wasn't that Arbor couldn't handle all of them. In fact, the strongest among them was a level 10 spiritual master. Arbor was confident that she could beat him. But after all, 2 fists couldn't beat 4 hands, right? Arbor frowned and was about to summon Qi Shui and the other beasts to help when the little water baby suddenly jumped onto her head and danced with joy. "Master, watch me." As soon as it finished speaking, a loud bang sounded in everyone's ears. Chapter 1845. The dozen or so masked men in black who heard the loud noise looked down at the same time and were horrified to find that the soil under their feet seemed to be suddenly manipulated by something. Not only did it all crack open, but there was even a terrifying huge water flow that crashed onto their bodies. The group of masked men in black who were caught off guard were swept left and right by the water flow that rushed out from the ground and fell to the ground, unable to get up. As soon as the leader opened his mouth, he felt the underground water mixed with a large mouthful of sand rush into his mouth and pour into the depths of his throat. He immediately shut his mouth tightly and was so scared that he didn't dare to speak carelessly anymore. "Master, use your spiritual sense to look at your inner world." Little Water danced happily on top of her head. "It's very strange, Master." "What's so strange about it? Who has the time to look at the inner world during such a tense battle?" However, seeing Little Water's urging look, Arba was too embarrassed to say no. Thus, she used her spiritual sense to enter her inner world and open the door to her inner world to take a look. She was immediately stunned. In this more than 500 cubic meters of inner world, the 3,000 stone sculptures revealed their true faces. To be precise, one of the stone sculptures actually peeled off its outer shell and revealed a golden statue inside. It started to walk around in her inner world in a daze. This was simply a ghost. She looked carefully at the walking golden statue. It looked familiar no matter how she looked at it. Heaven-defying Uncle Master? An inexplicable thought suddenly arose in her mind. The 10-meter-tall martial uncle paced back and forth among the group of statues, his steps slow and leisurely. Arba's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. These stone sculptures couldn't all transform into Master and Uncle Master, right? Little Water, why did the sculptures suddenly move? "I don't know. Could it be a benefit after Master's advancement?" Little Water asked innocently. Arba, she didn't quite believe it. She raised her hand and tapped her chin. Could it really be a benefit after advancement? Why were these sculptures of Master and Uncle Master in her inner world? And they could even run and move? There were as many as 3,000 sculptures. Could they all transform into Master and Uncle Master? What the hell? Arba pinched her little face and felt that this was a bit unreal. "Master, why don't you take this walking statue out and see if it works?" Arba tried using her spiritual sense and found that it was barely enough. With her current level 3 spiritual sense, she could barely take out the huge martial uncle statue. Arba took a deep breath. He wrapped his spiritual sense around the sculpture and pulled with all his might. Suddenly, he heard a loud bang. The masked black-clothed people, who had finally straightened up from the water flow with great difficulty and were about to counterattack, instantly looked at the giant golden figure towering in front of Xiao Mu in bewilderment. What was going on? Where did this golden man come from? Several black-clothed masked men disregarded everything and raised their swords to slash at the golden man's thighs. Clang! Bang! Their swords and sabers were beheaded at the same time. Of course, it was broken by the hardness of the golden man. One of the black-clothed men looked in horror at the golden statue that was looking down at him in a daze. Ah! He finally couldn't help but scream. What the hell was this? Why was it that no matter how many swords they slashed, they couldn't cut it? Arba panicked. "Uncle Master, don't let them slash you. Slash them." These words were like an order. At the end of the 6th watch, Chapter 1846. As soon as she said this, it was as if she had given an order. The huge golden man, who was originally at a loss, suddenly lifted her leg and kicked at the masked man in black in front of her. This kick was like kicking a ball. In an instant, the unlucky masked man in black was kicked several feet away. He rolled on the ground and cried out in pain, unable to get up on the spot. Arba secretly clenched her small fists and looked up at the golden man, who had suddenly exploded with power. She hurriedly took 2 steps back and made an open space for them to fight. It was very obvious that the masked men in black were no match for the golden man. It was too easy for the golden man to deal with them. Basically, she only needed to lift her leg and kick or raise her large palm to get rid of 1 or 2 little mice. She did not need to waste any effort at all. Looking at the menacing group of masked men in black being beaten to a pulp by the Golden Man, Abba was in a rather good mood. She simply hopped onto a branch in the forest and watched the scene of them being beaten up with great interest. The masked men in black had originally wanted to escape. Unfortunately, as long as any of them had this thought and tried in vain to get away from the Golden Man, they would be hit by a ray of golden light from the Golden Man's hand. Abba looked carefully and realized that what flew out of the Golden Man's hand were actually golden needles. They were as thin as gadflies and as fast as lightning. In just a moment, 7 or 8 masked men in black were knocked down. From the beginning to the end of the battle, it did not take more than 10 minutes. Looking at the wailing masked men in black rolling back and forth on the ground, Abba nodded in satisfaction. She ran down from the tree and hopped to the Golden Man's side. She hugged her thigh and climbed up a little. In a flash, she climbed onto the Golden Man's shoulder and sat down. Xiao Mu propped up her chin with one hand as she mused. Why did it seem like climbing up while hugging the gold figurine and sitting on her shoulder was a habitual action? She did it almost without thinking. Casting aside this strange thought, Abba lowered her head and glanced at the dozen masked men in black who had completely lost their ability to fight. At this time, Duanmu Qing, Qi Xianxian, and the others who had rushed over after hearing the sounds of fighting were all calling out her name nervously. Abba quickly regained his senses and waved at them. "I'm here." Duanmu Qing and the others quickly ran over and raised their heads to look at Abba, who was sitting on the Golden Man's shoulder. Fatty was the first to call out, "Jojo, what are you doing? Where did this Golden Man come from?" Abba waved at them and raised his hand to pat Golden Man's slippery head. He slid down from her shoulder and ran to the crowd. "Come and greet my martial uncle." "What?" Qi Xianxian and the others stared at her in confusion. Then, they raised their heads to look at the Golden Man. Although the golden figure was very beautiful, it was just a golden figure. Why did Jojo call her martial aunt? Everyone looked at her in confusion. "Jojo." Abba looked at them sternly. "Come and greet my martial uncle. Be careful that she doesn't beat you up when she's unhappy." Her large eyes swept across the masked men in black on the ground. "Do you see? These were all beaten up by my martial uncle." Hearing this, little Fatty was the first to take a few steps forward and solemnly bowed to the golden statue. "Greetings, Chow Chow's martial uncle." Everyone instantly fell silent. This damned Fatty, he immediately became listless when he heard that he was going to be beaten up. Chapter 1847. He even went up to the golden statue in such a serious manner and bowed with his hands clasped in front of him. He looked like he was trying to suck up to the golden statue. Abba nodded and looked at the others. Everyone stepped forward and followed little Fatty's example, cupping their hands at the golden statue. "Greetings, Jojo's Uncle Master." Abba nodded her little head in satisfaction, then stepped forward and kicked one of the men in black. "Tie them all up." A few seconds later, all the men in black hung their heads and were tied to a few trees. Abba held a vine whip with barbs in her hand and walked in front of them. She lifted one of the men's chin with the vine whip and asked coldly, "Who sent you to kill me?" "I don't know." That man gritted his teeth and snorted angrily. Abba looked at him coldly and swung the vine whip with barbs heavily onto that man's body. The black-clothed man screamed in pain. In an instant, he felt that a pill had been flicked into his mouth. He immediately roared, trying his best to spit out the pill. Abba had already moved to the side. Seeing him spit it out a few times and his expression changed greatly, she couldn't help but sneer. "Don't waste your energy. This pill melts in your mouth and melts in water. Want to vomit? In your next life." That man in black looked up at her angrily and shouted hatefully, "You, what do you want?" Abba didn't waste time with him. She turned and walked to another man in black beside him. "Who sent you to kill me?" No, I don't know." "Yo, you're quite stubborn." The little Fatty kicked the black-clothed man in the stomach and opened his mouth. "Chow Chow, feed him one too." They swallowed the poison that Abba rewarded them. Their bodies trembled and they were drenched in sweat. Soon, the other men in black saw that their companions who swallowed the poison were starting to take effect. Seeing each and every one of them screaming miserably as they leaned against the trees on their last breaths, it was as if they were going through the trials of the sea of hellfire. Seeing this, Yong Kai couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. Arbor kicked one of them. How's that? After that person swallowed the medicine, he felt as if his insides were burning, as if there was a real flame burning his internal organs. However, this was not the scariest part. The scariest part was that after being burned by the fire, he felt as if his internal organs were being cut by a sharp weapon. That kind of pain and fear was really uncomfortable. Arbor glanced at them coldly and walked up to a trembling boy. He gently patted the boy's face with his vine whip. Do you know what they will do next? Don't worry, you won't die within a month. It's just that the pain you'll experience will make you wish you were dead. Of course. You men of sacrifice are not even afraid of death. Of course, you are not afraid of pain, right? No, no, no. The man in black who was treated so gently by her turned pale with fright. His entire body trembled like a sieve. Who sent you to kill me? Arbor asked gently. Although his voice was gentle, when it entered the ears of the men in black, it was like a touch of ice under the tip of a knife, penetrating into the depths of their bones and blood. Scary. It's Master Yu, the man in black said. Arbor's vine whip landed on his face. You don't even know how to make up a lie? Do you know what happens to people who lie to me? The rest of the update would probably be done at noon. The update time was adjusted to the day. Updating past midnight every day, it was dog-tired. Chapter 1848. That person's entire body trembled, almost falling limp on the tree. I'll talk. Yes, yow yow. Ugh. An arrow mercilessly pierced that person's heart, killing him on the spot. Following that, the black-clothed men tied to the tree were also shot to death by a flurry of arrows. Arbor and the rest retreated a few steps, drawing their weapons one after another. Their expressions were cold as they swept the arrows in front of them. After a round of arrow rain, everyone felt an oppressive aura envelop the sky above them. Qi Xianxian, Duanmu Qing, Little Fatty, and Ma Ta's expressions tensed up at the same time. They subconsciously moved closer to Arbor and looked up at the sky not far away. The incoming person was extremely fast. In a short moment, the person had already flown above them. A heavy pressure weighed heavily on everyone's hearts. More than 200 archers, 40 of them stood on the back of a large flying beast. They were ready for battle, and their arrows were aimed at Arbor's 8 people below. More than 200 people summoned their mystical beasts at the same time. The entire forest rumbled as the beasts ran and the eagles cried. Not far away, the instructors who were waiting for their students to return with branches to make mushroom soup heard the sound and hurriedly ran towards the source of the sound. On the other side, Arbor's 8 people had also summoned their mystical beasts. Tigers roared and phoenixes cried, and in a short moment, they were engaged in battle with hundreds of mystical beasts. Due to the large number of opponents, the outcome of the battle might not be decided in a short time. When the 5 instructors arrived, the arrow rain was at its densest. Their expressions changed as they hurriedly deflected dozens of arrows in front of them. Where's Jojo? Zhou Danjin anxiously asked Qi Xianxian beside him. Jojo went to deal with an old man. Duanmu followed him. Zhou Danjin frowned. With a sweep of his palm, he sent a wolf that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws flying. He hurriedly turned around and said, I'll go take a look. At the edge of the forest, Duanmu Qing was forced back a dozen steps by the elder. He barely managed to stabilize himself and raise his head. He saw that the white-haired elder was already closing in on him. A cluster of flames in his palm was aimed at Duanmu Qing's heart. Arbor's heart skipped a beat. His hands moved faster than his brain. He pushed Duanmu Qing to the side and hid behind the Golden Man. The old man's fire spirit shield landed on the Golden Man's body, causing the flames to soar high into the sky. The old man's eyes narrowed, and he rushed toward Arbor again in annoyance. How infuriating! From a moment ago until now, the sly girl had been hiding behind the golden man. He didn't know what this golden man was. It didn't hurt when he hit it, and it didn't burn it. If this continued, he would be the one being besieged by the mythical beasts summoned by Gueyatu and the others after they dealt with the 200 beasts and archers. I can't let this continue. The old man's brows furrowed. He suddenly raised his hand, and flames rose from the ground. They burned fiercely and circled around Arbor, trapping her inside. Duanmu Qing was furious. His vines grew wildly from the ground and extended toward the old man's feet. The elder harumphed and flew into the air with a whoosh. Flames appeared between his hands as he furiously roared, "Take this!" A huge fire descended from the sky. The entire forest seemed to have been set ablaze. Clusters of flames fell from the sky like a rain of fire. Arbor's gaze turned cold. A circle of defensive talismans fell on her and Duanmu Qing. Chapter 1849. Arbor flicked his finger, and hundreds of attack talismans flew toward the old man. Boom! Boom! After hearing a series of loud bangs, the bearded elder smashed away the attack talismans that Xiao Mu threw at him with fireballs with a sullen face. He then cast an unsightly glance at Xiao Mu. Although Xiao Mu was enveloped by the fire, she was completely unscathed. The water spiritual barrier that appeared on her skin also kept the flames outside very well. The old man's eyes flashed, and he couldn't help but be amazed. This little girl from the lower star zone was not only equipped with all kinds of magical treasures, spiritual artifacts, and holy beasts, but also had such a high level of comprehension and cultivation. Even in the upper 3 provinces, she could be called a peerless genius at such a young age. In the sky, Prince Emo, who was standing on the back of the golden dragon, took out a vine and looked at it carefully with a frown. The sapling didn't react at all. Did something happen, or did he see it wrong? Logically speaking, if Jojo was really near him, he should be able to contact her through the sapling and even enter the Paradise Planet. But now, the sapling didn't react at all. Emo Lien pondered and put away the vine. Then, he looked up. 8 flying horses with their hooves treading on the snow could be seen approaching from the horizon. Accompanied by the celestial music that seemed to have descended from the heavens, a somewhat delicate voice rang out clearly, "Your Highness, please wait. Princess Jing of the Pangu clan from the Aurora Sandland is here to see you." Holding his saber, Dao Wuji raised his eyebrows and touched his chin. The princess of the Pangu clan from the Aurora Sandland? Isn't that the genius princess of the largest clan in the desert zone outside the 3 provinces? I heard that she's a great beauty. When I left the Divine Land, she was only 13 years old. At that time, Princess Jing was already famous. Everyone knew her. Everyone calculated Princess Jing's age in their hearts. She should be at least 27 or 28 years old now. Dao Wuji had spent more than 10 years in the tower, so he was probably 27 or 28 years old. This Princess Jing is a legend. It is said that she went to the battlefield at the age of 9, and at the age of 12, when she fought against the giant demon clan, she defeated an army of 300,000. She is a legend that does not lose out to men. Little 7. The Crown Prince's cold voice rang out, interrupting Endless Blade's rambling. Yen Qi swung his dragon tail and immediately increased his speed. With a whoosh, he circled around from the side. With a dragon roar, he swung his dragon tail heavily, causing a strong wind to blow. The 8 Pegasi cried out in alarm and almost fell from the sky. The coachman's face paled as he hastily reached out to pull on the reins. After pacifying the horse for a while, he finally calmed it down. The face of the round-faced maid who had invited the princess was slightly pale. She stared blankly at the dragon's body as it disappeared into the distance. She secretly gritted her teeth and said, "Princess." The crown prince left without a word. A faint voice came from inside the carriage. "It's fine. Just follow them." The maidservant was stunned for a moment before she instructed the coachman, "The princess has ordered us to follow her." The coachman nodded. With a wave of his whip, he immediately followed. Dao Wuji stood behind Emolien. He looked back and coughed softly. "The Pangu clan's people are following us." Emolien was unmoved. She did not even lift her eyelids. Dao Wuji raised his hand and touched his nose. He was asking for a snub. 3:30 in the afternoon. Chapter 1850. The voice that had stopped Emolien earlier rang out again. "Princess of the Pangu clan of the Aurora Sandland requests an audience with His Highness the Crown Prince of the Divine Land." Emolien did not even turn her head. Seventh Yan's speed was also very fast. In a moment, the carriage was far behind them. The corner of Dao Wuji's mouth twitched. He coughed lightly and said, "Boss, she's chasing after us." Fairy Ginkgo glared at him and snorted. "What? You fancy her? We haven't even met yet. You haven't even seen her face yet. You're already thinking about her?" Dao Wuji rolled his eyes and said exasperatedly, "What are you talking about? Although I want to marry a few more wives after I come out, do you think I can fancy someone like Princess Jing? She's so fierce. I might kill her before I even marry her. Between a woman and my life, I'd rather choose my own life." Fairy Ginkgo glanced at him disdainfully. "She's just a little girl. Look at how scared you are. Useless guy. How can she be so powerful?" Dao Wuji was a spiritual paragon. A little girl who could reach the 7th level of the divine realm at such a young age was already very impressive. Dao Wuji rubbed his chin. "TCH, only a little girl is interesting? Do you think I'll find a 100-year-old man like you?" Fairy Ginkgo flew into a rage and threw a punch at Dao Wuji's face. "Who are you calling a 100-year-old man?" Dao Wuji pursed his lips and looked at Fairy Ginkgo and Fairy Muden pitifully. "Can you two stop pretending to be young? The two of you are over 300 years old. What, you won't allow me to call you old men? On the Divine Land, even a useless ordinary person's average age could reach over 200 years old, let alone cultivators. Naturally, their lifespans were even longer. Princess Jing was only 27 or 28 years old. She could only be called a little girl. Compared to Fairy Peony and Fairy Ginkgo who were over 100 years old, there was a big difference in age." Fairy Ginkgo spat at Dao Wuji's face. "Watch your words. Are you asking for a beating?" She hated it when people talked about her age. Of course, which woman in the world liked it when people called her old? With Dao Wuji's despicable appearance, he would be beaten up no matter where he went. Limitless Blade could only snort, looking like he was at his wit's end. He shrugged at Fairy Ginkgo. All right, just take it that I said something wrong. You're as beautiful as a flower, and you're still young." "Of course." Fairy Ginkgo glanced at him, twirling her small orchid fingers and snorting. "That Princess Jing, who goes in and out of the battlefield with a group of men, killing enemies everywhere. How gentle and demure can she be? She's obviously a tigress." Dao Wuji felt as if the girl he admired had been destroyed. He couldn't help but argue with her. "How can you do that? You haven't even seen Princess Jing's face. How can you slander her like this? That's not very good." The Ginkgo fairy touched her own face. "Can that kind of little girl be more beautiful than me?" Dao Wuji was helpless. He turned to look at the silent little Tai Sui and asked curiously, "Little Tai Sui, why aren't you saying anything?" Little Tai Sui didn't even bother to pay attention to him and just threw him a cold look. Dao Wuji couldn't help but feel aggrieved. He sighed softly and looked away. Every time he talked to little Tai Sui, he would get angry after a few sentences. "Why?" Chapter 1851. "Your Highness, please wait." A cold voice came into everyone's ears. He saw a few flying white horses spread their wings and swept across the sky, quickly chasing after them. Of course, The flying horses were not as fast as the golden dragon, but the woman on the flying horses used her divine power to speed up and caught up in just a few minutes. Fairy Ginkgo turned her head to look and saw a woman in a red dress with delicate features. She was riding on the wind and clouds. Under the red cloak, her black hair was like a waterfall, her eyes were like stars, and her eyebrows were like crescent moons. Her face was cold and elegant. Her otherworldly temperament made people gasp in admiration. How could there be such an otherworldly woman in the world? She was like a piece of jade made by the heavens. Behind her, there were 4 or 5 flying horses. On each flying horse, there was a beautiful maid. They seemed to be the personal maids of Princess Jing. Compared to the maids of ordinary families, these women had a more valiant and formidable aura. They looked extraordinarily valiant and intimidating. These maids were all dressed gorgeously and had swords on their waists. The hilts of the swords were inlaid with all kinds of gems and agates. They would make Princess Jing proud if she brought them out. People might even believe that they were ladies of noble families. Princess Jing took the lead. She activated her divine power and quickly approached the golden dragon. She saluted the crown prince from afar. "Your Highness, Your Highness." However, the crown prince ignored her. The back of his head was facing her. He didn't even turn around. Princess Jing didn't get angry. Instead, she leaped into the sky and landed in front of the golden dragon, blocking its path. "Your Highness, please wait." Dao Wuji and the Luo brothers beside him looked at each other. Prince Amo treated her so coldly, but Princess Jing still followed him. She was indeed a heroine. Emo Lien frowned. He looked very impatient. He glanced at Princess Jing coldly and said, "Jing Linyao of the Pangu clan in the Aurora Sandland." This sentence was said without any emotion. There was a hint of mockery in his tone. Just like Princess Jing and most of the other people in the world, they were all cats and dogs that were not worthy of being remembered by Prince Amo, that's right. Princess Jing was calm. Even if she heard the sarcasm in the crown prince's voice, she didn't care. She nodded slightly, raised her hand, and threw a thin piece of paper in Emolien's direction. However, Emolien didn't reach out to take it, nor did he even glance at it. A purple flame directly landed on that piece of paper, burning it to ashes on the spot. Princess Jing was stunned. The maids behind her were also stunned. They all looked at the crown prince with an ugly expression. "Your Highness actually burned His Majesty's imperial edict," Princess Jing said calmly, as if what Mo Lien burned was not an imperial edict, but a piece of paper. Prince Amo turned on his mocking mode and said nonchalantly, "It's just a random thing, I don't want to see it." Princess Jing smiled faintly. "Perhaps the crown prince should find a place to talk with me." Prince Amo glanced at her and said coldly, "Little Seven." Little Seven immediately understood. She could tell that her master was in a bad mood. She didn't dare to wait any longer. She immediately flew out. Princess Jing frowned. She looked at the direction where the crown prince left and remained silent for a long time, until a maid came up and whispered in her ear, "Your Highness, it's a failure. Tomorrow at 12:30, there's no need to rush. Let's meet tomorrow or the day after." Chapter 1852. Wanlu Town. It was the most prosperous town near Mount Dai Zong. The population of the town had almost exceeded 10,000 people. Usually, people from the surrounding villages would come to Wanlu Town when they needed to trade or buy things. Mount Dai Zong was basically the hunting garden of the Heavenly Academy before it became a place to nurture corpses. The Heavenly Bestowing Academy was the #1 academy in the Poland prefecture. There were at least 30 to 50,000 students, if not 80,000. From the outside, the entire Heaven Bestow Academy seemed to be stationed in a large city near Mount Dai. Wanlu Town was so close to the Heavenly Academy. Usually, the students of the Heavenly Academy could only go to Wanlu Town to play during the holidays. It was not hard to imagine why Wanlu Town was so prosperous in recent years. It was getting late. The people in Wanlu Town were busy packing up their stalls and hurrying home. Jing Linyao walked past in a hurry with 4 or 5 maids in gorgeous clothes. This group of people, from Princess Jing to the maids beside her, were all dressed in bright and beautiful clothes. Wherever they passed by, they would attract the attention of others. Jing Linyao seemed to be immersed in her own thoughts. She did not pay attention to how the people nearby looked at her. "Your Highness, we can only stay in Shuntian Prefecture for less than a month. When the time comes, we must go back immediately. Otherwise, if we are noticed by the heavenly law, we will all be in trouble." A personal maid followed behind Princess Jing and said softly, "Where are they?" Jing Linyao asked in a low voice. "They are in the Shunlai Inn not far ahead." They hurriedly turned a corner and saw the signboard of the Shunlai Inn in front of them. Because Princess Jing and her group of 6 were moving too fast, they almost collided with a group coming from the side. Both parties were going to enter the Shunlai Inn. Princess Jing stopped and frowned at the girl who had entered the inn with her. The girl was about 24 years old. She was wearing a clean blue dress. Her face was not outstanding, but she gave people a good impression of her. Behind her were 5 young girls in the same dress. They all looked at her. "Sorry." Princess Jing and the woman leading the group spoke at the same time. They nodded at each other and exchanged some pleasantries before inviting each other to enter. The 2 groups each took a few steps back. Then, Princess Jing nodded at the leader of the other group with a smile and quickly led the maids inside. "Princess, they are in the sky room on the 2nd floor." The ordinary-looking woman in her mid-20s glanced at the direction where Jing Linyao went. Then, she called the other 5 women and walked toward a quiet place in the corner of the lobby that was covered by several bonsai plants. "Master! Second Marshal Uncle! Second Marshal Uncle! Auntie!" The group of people called out to each other. Then, the 2 women smiled and gestured for them to sit down. "How have you been in the academy recently? The instructors in the academy are all pretty good." The leading girl nodded and said, "Master, the 6 of us will fight for a place to go to Dai Zong Mountain this time. If everything goes well, we should be able to pass the preliminary selection. You must be careful." Auntie looked at the children lovingly and said softly, "Where there is life, there is hope." Chapter 1853. We still need to put safety first. "Don't worry, Auntie. Our lives won't be sacrificed so easily." "Right, we still need to preserve our lives and plan slowly," a round-faced little girl around 19 years old said through clenched fists and gritted teeth. Auntie E sighed. 3 years had passed, but the seeds of hatred buried in these young children's hearts were growing stronger and stronger. The past was already in the past, but the grief was even more intense. Even she was unable to let go of the enmity and hatred in her heart, let alone these disciples who were brooding. Young Shirong looked up and looked outside the window. Under the setting sun, pedestrians hurriedly passed by Wanlu town, which was enveloped in a hazy yellow. 3 years ago, only 200 of the Holy Water sect's 800 disciples survived the massacre, and they fled here like stray dogs. The most important thing was that the Holy Water sect had lost their backbone. The sect master was dead, and eldest senior sister and third junior sister were all dead. Young Shirong's heart couldn't help but clench every time she thought of how her youngest disciple would feel when she saw the Holy Water sect's former residence covered in ruins. The biggest mistake of all was not to bring the child along with them. She didn't know how she was doing now, but she should be safe. "Master." The woman in the lead was Second Peak senior sister, Yu Gue. In that battle 3 years ago, countless disciples from the 3 peaks had died, and there were only a few disciples left. Young Shirong laughed bitterly and downed a cup of tea. She nodded faintly and said, "Master is fine." So many years had passed, but every time she thought of the fireworks and wine from that day, she couldn't help but feel bitter in her heart. She never would have expected that the joyous gathering that night was the prelude to the death god's music. "Second Aunt Master, are the others all right?" Third Peak's disciple, Chan Hanzi, couldn't resist asking softly. "They're all fine." Young Shirong nodded and looked at the 6 people apologetically. "Back then, I sent the 6 of you to Heavenly Bestow Academy to study in order to gather information. These years, we've been apart more than we've been together. Do you blame me for finding it difficult to see each other?" The 6 people all shook their heads. They were very clear about their mission. Even in the academy, the 6 people only nodded faintly when they met occasionally and didn't show much intimacy. It was as if they were just the most ordinary students in the academy. Second martial uncle, don't worry. Most of the other students in the academy are doing well. There are 6 other people who are going to Dai Zong Mountain with us. There will be mentors leading the team. When you encounter danger, you can leave Dai Zong Mountain as soon as possible without risking your life. The disciple who spoke was Jiang Qi, a disciple of the first peak. In reality, most of the first peak's disciples stayed behind. Jiang Qi was only 14 years old back then, so he and several other younger senior and junior sisters were knocked unconscious by Murong Sun and forced to be taken away by Yang Shirong and the others. Among the 3 peaks, other than Jiang Qi and Lu Ling, who was sitting next to her, the number of disciples from the first peak who survived was definitely less than 10. At that time, all the first peak disciples followed Master Murong Sun and eldest senior sister Su Shanshan and stayed behind. Thinking about it now, Jiang Qi couldn't help but cry silently. She probably wouldn't be able to find a master like Murong Sun even if she walked to the end of her life. Come, let's have a cup of tea instead of wine. Although we've only been together for a short time, it's fine as long as we know that we're doing well. Chapter 1854. Aunt E raised her teacup with a smile. Everyone followed suit and drained their cups in one gulp before smiling at each other. The Holy Water Sect's 800 disciples were of one mind and one life. As long as they were alive, the Holy Water Sect would be alive. Tap, 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 tap. The group of valiant maidservants followed Princess Jing to the 2nd floor and arrived at the door of Heavenly Room No. 1. Just as they reached the door, they heard smashing cups and screaming curses coming from inside. Princess Jing's footsteps paused, and she frowned slightly. The maidservants also revealed disdainful expressions, as if they were already used to the people inside acting like this. When Jing Linyao pushed open the door and entered, the 3 women inside the room all turned to look at her. A slightly older woman, who was dressed very gracefully and elegantly, was currently sitting on an armchair. She couldn't help but frown when she saw Jing Linyao. 2 young women were standing and sitting on either side of her. One of them had a green silk sash around her waist and a jasper hanging from it. She was no more than 20 years old and had arched brows, almond-shaped eyes, and rosy cheeks. However, her angry expression ruined her pretty face. The other woman looked to be around 27 or 28 years old. She held a round fan in her hand and wore a camellia gray dress with golden threads. Her face paled in comparison to the other 2 women in the room, and she could only be considered a delicate beauty. "Why did you come in without knocking?" the older woman asked in a low voice. Her stern eyes landed on Jing Linyao, and her expression contained some dissatisfaction. "Greetings, mother." Jing Linyao calmly bowed and then signaled to the maidservants behind her with her eyes. The 2 maids immediately walked forward and pulled up the beautiful woman who was sitting on the stool. Without any explanation, they gave her 2 slaps on the face. "Ah!" that woman screamed. Because she was restrained by the 2 maidservants, she didn't fall to the ground. She only felt a burning pain on her cheeks, and she opened her mouth to scream. The 2 maids did not hesitate and slapped her twice more, blocking the woman's screams in her mouth. "Impudent!" Madame Jing was so angry that she was trembling all over. She jumped out of the armchair and pointed at Jing Linyao with a trembling finger, panting heavily. "Jing Lin Ya." Her voice sounded like it was coming out from between her teeth. Her face was full of anger. "Mother, my little sister is not sensible. If you don't discipline her, I can only discipline her on your behalf." Jing Linyao said faintly. "I've already warned her not to do anything." Jing Linyao coldly looked at the woman whose cheeks were swollen as if she was looking at a dirty bug. Her eyes were full of disdain. "What did this idiot do?" Did she think that no one would be able to find out about the stupid things she did? To walk out of the Aurora Sand and the boundless desert, the Pangu clan had to bow to the divine land. Jing Liniao's voice was cold. I can give the engagement to my younger sister. She had sworn that she would dedicate her life to the Pangu clan instead of getting married. Therefore, marriage would probably have nothing to do with her in this life. But can't you guys be a little smarter? Doing so is already deceiving the great emperor of the divine prefecture. Now you still want to make it known to the whole city? If she continues to be so stupid. Jing Liniao's eyes suddenly turned cold. I don't mind killing her. Chapter 1855. Jing Liniao slammed the door and walked out of the room, leaving behind Madame Jing, who was trembling with anger and whose lips were somewhat pale, Jing Minyao, who was sobbing, and Jing Qiao, who had nothing to do with this matter. Jing Minyao burst into tears and threw herself into her mother's arms. Bitch. Bitch. Mother, look at that bitch. How dare she humiliate me like this? That domineering and arrogant attitude was really disgusting. Min, don't cry. Madame Jing hugged her daughter and comforted her in a low voice. The most important thing now is to find a way to marry into the Mo family as soon as possible. When the time comes, you will be the crown princess. Even if your elder sister is respected in front of your father, her status will not be comparable to yours. Jing Qiao, who was like air, glanced at the mother and daughter with disgust and then smiled. Mother is right. Little sister, you must not be too sad. Hurry up and get up and let the maids help you reduce the swelling. Don't hurt your face later. Yes, yes. Madame Jing nodded. Your second sister is right. Hurry up and get up. Jing Liniao walked out of the sky room of the inn, her cold face slightly gloomy. How many people did that idiot send? Third Mrs. Dog went to gather them. He ordered Sir Chiu to take 200 to 300 people to chase and intercept them. Our people were not able to stop them. It's our fault. Nonsense. Jing Liniao was so angry that she slapped the railing on the second floor. The maids all hung their heads low, not daring to say anything. Xinlon, take some people with you and go there immediately. Remember to make sure that everything is clean. Don't get involved with the Pangu clan. Yes, princess. In the entire Pangu clan, Jing Liniao was the only one who could make all the clansmen bow their heads and willingly call her princess. As for the second and third daughters of the clan leader, they were all beautiful but useless embroidered pillows. Usually, everyone called them Second Miss and Third Mississippi. Jing Liniao returned to her room and sat on a chair. She pinched her eyebrows tiredly. The speed of the sand sinking was very fast. In the first half of this year alone, their clan had lost a lot of clansmen and animals because of the sinking of the sand. Many people fell down with the sand in their sleep and did not struggle at all. If this continued, the entire Pangu clan would be wiped out by the harsh living environment of the Aurora Desert. They could not stay silent like this. They had to walk out of the desert and go to the divine land. The Pangu clan had nearly 200,000 clansmen. If so many people wanted to go to the divine land at once, it would be impossible without first negotiating with the emperor. However, the result of the negotiation was that the Pangu clan had to hand over 20,000 elite soldiers and leave the only son of the clan leader behind as a hostage in the imperial capital of the divine land. The emperor of the divine land promised that Qingyue, the closest city to the desert, would be allocated to the members of the Pangu clan. However, the amount of offerings that had to be made every year was also a huge headache for them. The Pangu clan wanted to migrate, but the Pangu clan did not want to die. According to the plan of the Emperor of the Divine Land, in a few years, the Pangu clan's temperament would be smoothed out, and the entire clan would probably become a vassal of the Divine Land. Jing Liniao put her hand on her aching forehead and sighed. "Princess," a maid said in a low voice. Chapter 1856. Can we really do this? Won't it anger the emperor? The edict only says that the daughter of the leader of the Pangu clan is marrying the crown prince of the divine land. It doesn't mention me by name, so it's not a violation of the edict," Jing Linyao said calmly. The maids looked at each other and were speechless for a moment. In fact, they all knew that the Emperor of the Divine Land valued Princess Jing's talent, cultivation, and means. Although the edict didn't specify which daughter of the leader it was, but Princess Jing was the eldest daughter of the first wife. Her eldest daughter was unmarried, but her youngest sister was marrying the crown prince of the Divine Land. It didn't make sense. If the emperor knew that he was tricked, he might be angry. Jing Linyao sneered. Didn't the crown prince burn the emperor's edict? I've long known that the crown prince is not an easy person to get along with. I just wanted to do business with him, but he... The maidservant sighed. That's right. That willful crown prince didn't even have the mood to look at the edict. He directly set it on fire. Such an unexpected method is really amazing. Princess Jing picked up a cup of tea and drank it all. Then she threw the cup on the table and smiled happily. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Help me make an appointment with Prince Mo and tell him that I have a business with him. I'm sure he'll be very interested in the business I discussed with him. When the maids saw this, they nodded and respectfully retreated one after another. After closing the door, a slightly older maid sighed softly and said, I don't know if the princess will regret today's decision many years later. Today, they had all seen that His Highness Crown Prince Mo. He was simply a handsome man that was hard to come by in 1,000 years. From the bottom of their hearts, they felt that such a man was a good match for their Princess Jing. If they could really work together, they would be invincible when the strong work together. Unfortunately, that wasn't Princess Jing's goal. Although Jing Linyao didn't know what the maids were thinking, she could guess what they were thinking when she saw the slight regret in their eyes. Prince Mo was indeed the second most outstanding man she had seen in her life. The first time she saw such an outstanding man was 3 years ago, during the desert storm. Since then, although she would occasionally remember this man, it was only occasionally. She was a woman who was born to shoulder the fate of the entire Pangu clan. She didn't need to rely on men. The military forces she had now were all built up by herself over the past 10 years. She had ambition and desire, but all of this was based on the fact that she had to fight for it. She believed that one day she would be able to achieve her wish. But before that day came, she had to lay low. Whether it was Jing Qi Yao or Jing Min Yao, those little ants, they were just a cornerstone for her grand plan. She, Jing Linyao, never needed to rely on a man to live. With a mocking smile, Jing Linyao swept away the tent and lay down. After chasing Prince Mo for half a day today, she felt very tired. She had to lie down and think about how she should proceed in the future. Thorns and bumps were just a trial in life. In the end, all of this would turn into a field of flowers that bloomed for her. Chapter 1857. On the Other Side of the Forest. Although the fire was strong, Aba didn't feel any discomfort as she was surrounded by a ring of fire. Standing within the wall of fire, he used a pair of cold eyes to stare at the bearded old man whose expression changed slightly through the raging flames. A talisman floated into Aba's hand on its own. Whoosh! She was instantly lost in the fire. The old man started and quickly turned his head to see the girl standing on a tree branch. The ferrule in her hand turned into a streak of light as she slammed it towards the back of his head. The bearded old man laughed coldly, thinking that the girl in front of him was incomparably naive. She was clearly only at the beginning of the spirit realm, but she dared to be so bold in front of him, a worshipper who was already halfway into the spirit realm. This was simply laughable. Die! The bearded old man's eyebrows furrowed as he reached out to grab the girl's neck. The fierce whistling of the wind came from the sky, but Xiao Mu did not even crease her brows. Faster than words could tell, the water spirit in Aba's hand gurgled out from between her fingers and suddenly condensed into a ball of ice and snow, hurtling towards the old man's heart. Ha ha ha! The old man laughed wantonly, his face full of mockery. Do you think that the ice and snow you condense can hurt this old man's hair? Bam! He didn't dodge at all and simply opened his chest, allowing the ball of ice and snow to explode on his chest. He didn't even furrow his brow as his hand reached out to Arber's neck, only an inch away. He was about to grab Arber's slender neck in his hand. Whoosh! Suddenly, a stone landed on the bearded old man's head, causing him to feel pain at the back of his head. His eyes widened slightly. At the same time, Arber flung a talisman at the bearded old man's chest. As soon as the talisman came close to his chest, it suddenly exploded with a cold light. Ah! A sudden chill seemed to have seeped into his internal organs, causing the bearded old man's entire body to stiffen. His entire body suddenly shivered. How could this be? He didn't know that the ice and snow in Arber was just a test. The water talisman was the main point. The water spirit talisman exploded when it got close to the bearded old man, and all the cold air it contained seeped into his body. This person had comprehended the fire spiritual energy. Once the chill entered his body, it would naturally cause damage to his body. Just as this old man froze, a trace of redness faintly surfaced in Xiao Mu's eyes. Several large trees behind her were abruptly uprooted and swept up, smashing into the old man with a boom. Following that, the startled swan dagger slashed through the air. It was incomparably fast and pierced through the old man's shoulder in an instant, causing him to howl in anger. Great! A clap came from the top of the tree. Arber looked up and saw an old man with a brandy nose sitting on the treetop with his legs crossed and gulping down a mouthful of wine. Grandpa! Arber was slightly stunned. Ha ha! The brandy-nosed old man chuckled and lifted the bearded old man who fell to the ground with one hand. He waved at Arber and said, "Little girl, I'll take care of this old man for you. Today's matter, let's turn it into a small matter and turn it into nothing, okay?" Arber was expressionless, but a hint of displeasure appeared on his paralyzed face. "Oh, you know who they are." The old man raised his head slightly and looked into the distance. He laughed and said, "How would this old man know who they are? All right, I won't hinder you two from meeting. This old man will leave first. HM." Chapter 1858. A confinement glyph array suddenly landed around the rosé-nosed old man. Arber said coldly, "Put him down and leave." The old man carried the bearded old man with his right hand and turned to look pitifully at Arber. He lifted the wine gourd with his left hand and gulped down 2 more mouthfuls. "Little girl, where it's possible to make mistakes, one should spare them." 5 or 6 confinement glyph arrays landed around the rosé-nosed old man one after another. Arber's face was as cold as ice. He said expressionlessly, "Put him down and leave." The old man was at his wits' end. He sighed and looked at her with a serious expression. "Actually, this old man just doesn't want you to get involved in this mess. You're still young. The road ahead is long. At this time, you're still very insignificant in the eyes of some people. Those people are not people you can afford to offend. The divine lands." Arber said coldly. "So what?" The rosé-nosed old man was startled. He looked her up and down. "Little girl, don't be too stubborn. This old man is doing this for your own good. No need." Arber refused coldly. There was no room for negotiation in his tone. "Put him down. Otherwise, I won't rest until I'm dead." The old man, this damn child's temper was really unlikable. The bearded old man took 2 steps back. He looked up at the sky behind Arber and said to Arber helplessly, "Little girl, I'm sorry. Today, I must take this person away." Then, he punched at the confinement glyph set up by Arber. With this punch, the first confinement glyph immediately collapsed. But what made the old man depressed and speechless was that with a wave of Arber's hand, more than 10 confinement glyph arrays reinforced his surroundings. In addition to the previous 5 or 6 confinement glyph arrays, F*CK, where did you get so many glyph arrays? "I have all the time in the world," Arber said coldly. At most, he would just drag it out. The rosé-nosed old man's glyph arrays were not as easy to break as he appeared to be. Let's see how many glyph arrays he could break in one go. Abba took out the gold-beaded talisman pen from his conscience and drew a confinement talisman in the air. Today, he must leave his life behind. You want to help me? Then don't leave either. Abba's face darkened as he coldly shouted. His voice was so cold that even the old man with rosacea couldn't help but tremble slightly. This child was really a stubborn person. A few minutes after Duanmu Qing and Jean Ran arrived, they saw Zhou Danjin rushing over with an anxious expression. Seeing that the two of them were fine, he could not help but let out a sigh of relief. The old man with rosacea couldn't help but smile bitterly. He thought to himself that today's matter was really not going to end well. Abba's speed of drawing talismans was really fast. Just as the old man smashed 2 more talisman arrays, Abba had finished drawing 2 more sets of talisman arrays and directly threw them to the old man's side. While the old man with rosacea was cursing in his heart, he couldn't help but sigh. If such a talisman genius were to go to the divine prefecture's Mu clan, he would definitely be worshipped, right? Abba concentrated on drawing talismans and entered a state of complete selflessness in the blink of an eye. At this moment, he only felt that there were talismans in front of him, and he could draw as he pleased. In the eyes of others, the speed at which he drew talismans could no longer be called abnormal, but crazy. The old man with rosacea's expression became slightly serious. F***ck. At this rate, not only would he not be able to break the glyph arrays around him, but he would also be heavily confined within them. Chapter 1859. Those who wanted to take her life would have to be one step ahead of her and leave their lives for her. No one knew how much she valued her life and her body. This level could be called abnormal. After he had lost everything, he had seen his own limbs wither away, and then he had regained all of this. Apart from herself, no one could understand her feelings of regaining what she had lost. She cherished and loved her body very much. She didn't even want to have the slightest scar on her body. No one could try to take her life. No one could. When Qi Xianxian, the little fatty, and Mata arrived, they vaguely saw a burst of bright light erupting from the little fellow's body. It was as if something in her body had broken through the shackles and reached the sky. The red-nosed old man, who was trying his best to break through the confinement glyph array, looked in the direction of Abba with a dumbfounded expression. This girl, she, in the depths of her consciousness that no one could see, the golden talisman jade tome opened the 8th jade slip and introduced Abba to a wider world, learning the art of talisman drawing. The advancement of her talisman master level caused her spiritual sense to rise to the 7th level. She didn't have time to look at the several new talismans she had just learned. She only glanced at the doppelganger talisman. Her heart moved slightly, and she saw a demonstration talisman floating out from the hidden jade slip. Ghost summoning talisman. Ghost summoning talisman. Could it be that it could summon a powerful ghost spirit into the world? But she had always been a person who couldn't see ghost spirits. If she summoned a powerful ghost spirit, how would she restrain it? After all, it was a ghost spirit. Once it went out of control, it would become a crisis and affect the world. That wouldn't be good. She had never been a good person, but she had never thought of harming others. After putting away the ghost summoning talisman, she discovered that the Spirit Division Record's Soul Chapter had made great progress. After entering the 6th level of the Soul Chapter, while forging the 6th branch meridian, the biggest benefit should be that she could control her spiritual sense to draw talismans for her in her consciousness. However, she calculated that with her current spiritual sense, she could control her spiritual sense for about 4 hours at most. After all, she couldn't let her spiritual sense dry up just to urge her spiritual sense to draw talismans. Although her spiritual sense recovery process was many times faster than others, she still had to pay attention to prevent her spiritual sense from being damaged. When Wei Wei, Instructor Hu, and the other 3 who had rushed over saw this scene, they could not help but be stunned. Even though they knew the little girl was an extremely outstanding Grand Talisman Master, the scene they witnessed with their own eyes had practically overturned their understanding of Grand Talisman Masters. They thought that when great Talisman Masters drew talismans, they would burn incense in seclusion and concentrate wholeheartedly. But now, They saw this young woman standing there and drawing numerous wooden talismans in midair. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they wouldn't dare believe it even if they were beaten to death. After a set of talisman arrays were completed, they were quickly placed on the body of the old man with rosacea. Before long, they began to sympathize with the old man. Aber opened her eyes and waved her hand. A doppelganger talisman fell on her body. Subsequently, it was an eye-opener. 2 afterimages rustled out beside the little girl. Each afterimage held the same gold-beaded talisman brush, and their movements were exactly the same as the little girl's. They were both drawing talismans. Everyone was speechless. Why did they feel so sorry for the old man with the rosacea? Why was he so insistent on taking the bearded old man away? Chapter 1860. The old man with the rosacea started to regret his decision. He shouldn't have gotten himself involved in this mess. Looking up, he saw a streak of light appear in the distant horizon. He cursed in his heart. That ancestor had really rushed over. However, it made sense. With such a huge commotion here, as long as one wasn't deaf, they would probably come over to take a look. The red-nosed old man threw out a few punches in a desperate struggle, landing on the confinement array glyphs. His face darkened as he threatened, "Little girl, if you don't stop now, this old man will use his full strength." Aba's gaze turned cold. With a wave of his hand, the ghost spirit talisman suddenly appeared beside her. Just now, she had already asked the little water baby. As long as she took out the black ghost spirit pearl, even if she couldn't see the strong ghost spirit, she only needed to inject a trace of spiritual power into it. With a thought, she could make the ghost spirit pearl absorb the strong ghost spirit. Even if the ghost spirit was comparable to an immortal supremacy, it wouldn't be able to escape. "I'm going to use all my strength too," Aba shouted coldly. "If you don't let her go, don't blame me for being heartless to you." Everyone held their breaths. Qi Xianxian only felt a heavy pressure on her body. She felt so stifled that she almost couldn't breathe. The old man with the rosacea was at his wits' end. Who told him to receive the order? Keep, collect, cripple, trap. Sigh, he really hated that bunch of women from the Jing clan. He didn't know what they were up to. Could it be that Jing Linyao thought that by casually tossing her retarded stepsister to the crown prince, the emperor could be fooled? The emperor valued Jing Linyao, this woman, and the contributions she had made over the years. The emperor felt that with Jing Linyao's ruthless methods and ability to deal with people, she was worthy of his son. If the Jing clan really dared to toss a retarded stepsister to his son, with the emperor's temperament, the entire Jing clan would probably be exterminated. Thinking about that imperial edict gave him a headache. He had already received news that His Highness had indeed burned his own father's imperial edict without mercy. This father and son pair were like natural enemies. They didn't have good expressions when they met, making things difficult for these old officials. Boom! A thunderous rumble came from the horizon. Along with the dark clouds, the dusk scenery was completely covered by the gloomy and dark clouds. Rosacea Nose's heart trembled slightly. He looked up at the sky and had a bad premonition. This little child wouldn't really want to fight him to the death, right? Why was this girl so stubborn? Rosacea Nose had a headache. In just a few seconds, he saw a huge black shadow appear in the thick black clouds, accompanied by a cold chill, attacking his heart. Holy shit, this dense baleful energy, could it be what he was thinking? Jojo. Aba's face was cold. After hearing the familiar voice, he was slightly stunned. All of a sudden, they looked up and saw a golden light gliding past their eyes. A golden dragon descended from the sky and transformed into a human. Crown Prince Mo, who was dressed in black, abruptly flitted across the sky like a soaring dragon before landing beside Xiao Mu. Aba's almond-shaped eyes widened slightly. He simply couldn't believe what he was seeing. Was he dreaming? Jojo. Seeing that she was in a daze, Prince Mo rushed forward and pulled her into his arms. He raised his hand and patted her fluffy head, letting out a long sigh. Fortunately, he didn't miss it. you're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.